This is Matchweek. You are joined by myself, Argjend Emini. We discuss everything soccer from the highs and the lows in the sporting week to the news that is relevant to you. And we are back. This is Match Week. Guys, we have a very great episode in store for you today. We have a returning guest. Hey, guys, say hi to Besmir. Besmir, what's up, man? Long time no see.
I know, it's a pleasure to be back. It's a pleasure to be back. I've been waiting for this moment since the last podcast. I'm going to continue to argue the fact that there's no reason I should have had the shortest podcast. So, I'm back.
It was the studio time. The people running the studio kicked us I'm
not going to say anything other than that. I'm just happy you brought me on with the other guest that's on today. I'm going to let it go because I'm on with him. So we'll let it slide.
So for those of you who are new to the podcast, your first episode, this is Besmir Zuta. He is the head coach at NJFC, runs the whole entire shtick. He's also the co-owner of ITA Sports, our proud sponsor. Obviously, you guys have seen in my little mini ads I've been doing so far. Yes, I know I look phenomenal, and thank you so much. I appreciate it, guys. And then today we're also joined by a very special guest. Honestly, his name is Argjend Emini. Yeah, let's just ignore the similarity in last name, please. His name's Argjend Emini. He's the head athletic trainer for the Redbulls Youth Academy. Correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, so I thought, like, since we're talking about in today's episode we're talking about like managers and like sort of like the new guys and how they're doing in the Prem and stuff like that, I thought I'd bring someone on who's experienced in working at a professional level. So are we excited for the topic today? Are we ready? You guys ready to go?
Yeah, I'm excited to get in depth about this. It'll be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I have a couple things to say on some of these new guys, so I'm excited to go forward with this.
For sure. Now, just to start off, as obviously some of the viewers know, me and Besmir were avid Premier League viewers, right? Like, we are diehard Chelsea fan in Besmir, then diehard United fan in me, and then we have Arj over here, who sort of is like the alternative guy, right? He's the Forza Milan type guy. He loves the Serie A. You want to go more into that, Arj, or you want to go straight into the topic?
Listen, it's AC Milan, right? You're talking about the Italian league, and you're talking about how defense wins championships. Your boy Sir Alex Ferguson said it himself, so that's how I'm gonna leave it.
Well, I mean, that man had Nani playing left back at one point, so it was like the man did anything he wanted. It didn't really matter. So that was Sir Alex for you.
He won a match with one forward, one goalkeeper, and 9 defenders. So yeah. I think it was 8 defenders, 9 defenders. I mean, listen.
Isn't that how we win all of our indoor games?
Yeah, no, just about. I mean, sit at the back, hope for the best going forward. Hey,
counterattack.
But then your one forward just can't finish. I wonder who that guy is.
No, it's typically me finishing from like half field, so that's fine. It works out well.
You did it twice over a span of 8 months. Whoop-de-doo, bro.
And then I have to figure out how to save every little thing for you guys, because what's defense when we play indoors? Let's get into the topic, because then we'll be stuck on this indoor travel story.
Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast on its own. So today we're gonna be talking about how the new managers in the Premier League are faring and how some of the new guys that are being rolled in right now are gonna fare with the likes of like Steven Gerrard, Antonio Conte, Claudio Ranieri, and so on. So we're just going to go into that step by step, team by team, see how they're going to fare out, whether they're going to help their team get that top table finish or even top 4 for some of them, or if they're going to get relegated. And if they get relegated, what are they going to do with that team, right? Like, are they going to be able to manage? So at first, we have a big choice, in my opinion. I felt like this is really risky from Aston Villa and Steven Gerrard, right? So Gerrard, as we all know, probably a phenomenal center mid, right? For sure. He's third in the pecking order when it comes to Frank Lampard and Paul Scholes, right? Like, he's like right under those two.
Well, yeah.
I got Paul Scholes as number one. I love you, Best, but Paul Scholes
Scholesy, bro. Come on, Besso. You gotta agree with us on this one.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that, however you'd like to measure a midfielder, whether it's goals, assists, trophies, and accolades, and like Lampard, most complete, the best goal scoring midfielder in history. But let's not get into this. That's a whole other podcast on its own.
Has the most trophies to his name, and he could ping a ball better than any person on the planet. You can't tell me that.
Well, if he was as great a passer as people say, he wouldn't be. He's a second-rate Xavi or Iniesta. I mean, there are people who pass the ball better than Scholesy.
They're better than him, though.
But that's just them being humble. Xavi and Iniesta are the best midfield duo in history, and I hate Barcelona to an extent. Nobody scores goals from the midfield like Frank Lampard. Steven Gerrard was great and all. I love the guy, but come on. Nobody strikes a ball from distance like Frank Lampard. But anyway,
I know Besmir say this all the time. No one hits the ball better than Mikel, so I don't know if I can trust your opinion, bro.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm not going to comment on that. They're easily second and third behind me.
I mean, when you're talking about Gerrard and again the Aston Villa appointment, it's pretty interesting in the fact that young guy. I mean, Scottish.
Well, he's 41 years old
for a managerial position, and you're coming from Rangers and then going to Aston Villa. Listen, I don't believe it could correlate that easily, but excited to see what he does with his his regular 4-3-3, or that he also does that 4-2-3-1, correct?
Yeah, for sure. Because the thing is with Gerrard, the way how we see a lot of these managers when they go from player to manager, they sort of reflect their playing style into their style of coaching, right? So if they were known as a attacking possessions based style of football, they're gonna put that into their team, right? They're going to be possession-based, pass the ball around, but be high up in the field, right? They're not going to sit back and just, hold the ball and just, take it. They're going to try to spread out wide, push forward, possess the ball, and just attack. And we see that a lot with, for example, Gerrard in his own, playing career, right? Because right now, all we have is this few seasons at, Rangers where we only know, that X amount, where more so people can only relate to his actual playing career. And how he played there, because he had a very, very long stint at Liverpool.
Yeah, I mean, I would jump in and say what I'm excited to see is the effect Lampard had at Chelsea, in that Steven Gerrard is going to draw you some big name players, even to Aston Villa, which in its own right is a large club, but it's not one of the big 6 or 7 in England. So the one thing I think Steven Gerrard will attract to Aston Villa is, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a couple of the older, living legends, or some of the best of their generation who might want one last go of it in England in the Prem. He might bring in someone who's going to be a little more experienced. I have no one that I can name off the top of my head that I think he might be going for, but I mean, Ben Chilwell said at Chelsea, he was a fullback wanted by a bunch of different clubs. He goes, I got a call from Frank Lampard. He goes, a call from Frank Lampard means something, especially to a young English international. I think Steven Gerrard has that same effect, and the quality of players he'll bring into Aston Villa will probably make more of a difference than it did at Chelsea, because Chelsea has its own natural draw, the top talent. But when Steven Gerrard comes calling, I think there's going to be a nice little influx of players, especially players that will help fill the void left by Jack Grealish. So, I think Aston Villa is gonna. I think it was it's an exciting. I'm gonna say it's an exciting addition to their club, bringing Gerrard in.
For sure, because as we all know about Villa, right? They're not some mediocre bottom table team anymore, right? They're very well run. Their director of football is a very well run man. People were really excited about their transfers in the summer too, because they sold Grealish, 100 million, a lot of money coming in, but they got 3, as a lot of people perceived, to be very solid players, right? You brought in Leon Bailey from Leverkusen, who's been high performing, high attacking, someone who could bring in that pace, but lately has been suffering from injuries, hasn't really adjusted properly. Then you have a Danny Ings who's guaranteeing you at least 15 goals a season for a club, and that's something that they needed. And then they also had brought in Emiliano Buendia, who is phenomenal at playing on that right side, but cutting in, playing in that central role more so, like attaching that attack, sort of like what Grealish did through the left side, except on that right flank, which was really really interesting. And then they also still had the likes of Ali Watkins, right, who was someone they brought from Brentford, I think in January, if I'm not mistaken. They brought him in from Brentford, bought him. He's had so far a fun time at Aston Villa, and we see that the team's strong, but their biggest weakness, I would have to say, is that defense, right? Because they have a phenomenal goalkeeper in Emiliano Martinez, who had an electric Premier League season last season. I think he was, third in the league for saves and like clean sheets. The only two people ahead of him, I think it was just Ederson, and then it was Mendy as he got to Chelsea. That's how they did the stat. It was Mendy when he got to Chelsea, Ederson was up top, and then it was Martinez, which just goes to show how lethal he is in the net. So, do you guys think that Gerrard will be able to manage that team into either improving that defense or to be able to tell them in January of which players to bring in to improve that team?
Well, it's probably going to be a mixture of both, right? Because he's going to want guys that he's familiar with in his system, he's had success with. So I can see him bringing a Scottish person from Rangers coming in through the ranks there. Even one of those like experienced midfielders like you guys were just talking about in the Premier League, like a Jack Wilshere. I can see that type of signing happening. That's a veteran. He's been through some pretty good games and brings that attacking football to the sense. And then when you talk about the playing style, right? I hope he uses the 4-2-3-1 more than the 4-3-3. It's just one of my favorite formations to use for some reasons. I love the two holding midfielders there. And again, when you're talking about defensively, what that shape is in a 4-2-3-1, we're looking at what? You're looking at 4 at the back, 3, and then 2 under that 9, right? So there's almost like 2 10s, and then the 3 midfielders, and you have the 4 defenders. So it just all depends. But when they're going forward, you're gonna put yourself up for those counterattacks, and it's just how do you balance that out? And so you'll have 3 at the back, right? You'll have your 6 and your 2 center backs. You want to push those fullbacks up wide, right? And then have that 8 push forward with those 2 10s, if you want to call them, and that 9. So curious to see what he does with that, and curious to see what he brings in. But again, they're aggressive. If you've watched Rangers, they press hard, which is the running theme of the Premier League now, with the big 3 in Manchester City, Chelsea, and Liverpool playing that aggressive press, and not really that zonal defense that we see in a 4-4-2, which we'll discuss later.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I'll have to say though is that I think who they have, it's like Konsa and House, I think are decent like center backs. I think they will do a decent job. It's just they've had to struggle with bringing in Tyron Mings, who I think is personally an overrated center back for Villa, because they say he's really good at clearing the ball and playing the ball at his feet. But if you look at how he's been playing in his stats, he's sort of been doing the opposite, right? Like Villa have been struggling to be clearing the ball from Villa have been struggling to clear the ball from their own defensive third. He has been struggling to get any completed passes together from the back. And no offense to Matty Target, right, who on the left flank has been decent. Like he's your average Premier League center back. He's not a world beater, but he gets the job done. He's not doing what needs to be done for that team because the right side of the part of the defense is better in a Matty Cash and a House.
Love Matty Cash.
He switched to the Polish national team, so we're gonna see a lot more of him on the international stage.
As he should.
Yeah, for sure. And then we're also on the left side, they really struggle a lot. But then the midfield, I think the midfield is where they're most stocked because they have players like Nakamba, Douglas Luiz, John McGinn. I love myself some John McGinn. What a player. That I think that's the one thing they might need. They either are gonna need a really strong like CDM, sit back, just be a brute, or they're gonna need someone to play well with McGinn because McGinn's a very well balanced box to box midfielder who I think personally can make it onto most Premier League teams with how he plays. We've seen it for how he does it on the international stage for Scotland. We see how well he's performed against many Premier League teams. I think they need to find someone who complements him very well, which is what Jack Grealish did.
Oh, I think Gerrard's going to bring the confidence, bud. And Bessel will touch on that, but you're going to have a down season when everything around you is not going well. The manager gets sacked, and you don't have that confidence. You don't know what's going on behind the dressing room, right? So with Gerrard coming in,
what was a struggle for Villa, from what I know, is that they lost 2 of their assistants. Like Dean Smith's main assistant coach had left 2 days before the season started. And then Steven Gerrard had left a month before the season started because of some backroom difficulties that was never really discussed. But losing those two key staff members made a really big difference within this Villa side season as we see so far.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to see what happens, right? We look at the first match under Steven Gerrard, right? You come out against Brighton, who, realistically speaking, has been playing out of their skin. I mean,
Graham
top half of the
Potter has been organizing a phenomenal team.
Yeah, brilliant, right? You come out, you beat them 2-0 convincingly. You know, I think they had Ramsey, the 20-year-old, playing in there, 2021, right? Young kid. You know, you're able to call, if I'm not mistaken, Ashley Young is back at Villa, right?
Yes.
But being able to
it doesn't matter,
call,
dude. Ashley Young is, again, we just spoke about that when Bessel brought
that experience.
That experience, man.
You know, Ashley Young, you being a United supporter, is what it is.
I love him. Don't get me wrong. I love Ashley Young. But
Ashley Young is what Dani Alves is at Barcelona right now, in that the experience, Steven Gerrard knows he has someone in the locker room who's going to make sure, you know, and I'm almost certain they've crossed paths with the English national team. They're only 3, 4, 5 years apart in age, right?
Yeah.
They've crossed paths. He knows he has an ally. He has a supporter. You know, for someone like me, who, you know, coaches 1.5 million teams, you know, all these players, knowing that if things are going well, everyone's always happy. Everything's going well. You're winning. When you start to lose, results aren't going your way, you need someone to say, hey, you know what? Listen, it's not the manager. It's not whatever. It's not any single person's fault. We're in this together. Ashley Young offers that to Steven Gerrard, and I wouldn't be surprised, like I said earlier, if Steven Gerrard goes and grabs a couple more veterans, right? Villa's a pretty young team. You know, Tuanzebe is on the bench, in and out of the lineup here and there. You know, you have Ramsey, you have Matty Cash is only 24. You know, so they're not the most experienced side. So being able to, you know, have those vets in the locker room really helps steady a ship if there's rough waters.
Absolutely. I think that's where they played a role though in the assistant coaching staff. That's where, like, instead of having to rely on Ashley Young, who I personally don't think that, like, I don't think he's a terrible player. It's just he's too old. Like, he's made performances in the Prem so far this season, the Carabao Cup, and he's lost his pacing. He can't keep up anymore. He was never a defender to begin with. He was forced there to find a place in the league. But listen to my point. So, but
yeah, go ahead.
That's where they had gotten it from, let's say, a John Terry, right? John Terry was that guy who was training with the team as his assistant coach, with them side by side, helping them out. At one point, he was a player manager, if I'm not mistaken. Like, he was involved with that team, and losing that, I think, is more crucial than trying to replace it with, let's say, an Ashley Young, who was never a real leader to begin with.
Yeah, well, from what I believe, he did wear the armband at United for a bit. Also,
United has been a joke for God knows how long.
But still, listen, he still wore the armband at arguably one of the largest clubs in the world. You know, not arguably, it is one of the biggest clubs in the world.
Yep.
You know, and that, you know, when you walk out into the Theatre of Dreams, Old Trafford, and there's a packed stadium yelling, you know, at you because you're probably losing if you're Manchester United nowadays. You know, it says something to have that pressure on your shoulder. Now, I laughed because you were speaking about him losing his pace and that extra step. Remember, his manager now, Steven Gerrard, same thing happened to him. What they do, they just put him in the 6. So Steven Gerrard couldn't drive like he used to, couldn't push forward, couldn't provide the energy. They just parked him at the 6 and had him pull a Pirlo out of the back.
Yeah, but isn't that where the famous slip came from, Besso?
Oh, totally. But that's just some bad luck. I mean, listen, I'll take that every day of the week. But I'm optimistic for Steven Gerrard and this Villa side. I think they finished kind of right where they are right now, 12th to 15th position. They'll have a decent January window, go into the summer, probably draw in some, you know, no huge superstars, but the kind of quality of player that a John McGinn gives you, or a Danny Ings, right? Who, you know, they're going to give you consistent, reliable performances in the Prem, and that's what they need. Villa's not going to be competing for the Premier League title. I'm sorry to say it. Unless
don't tell the villains
that,
bro. They'll be so upset to discover this information.
Listen, unless they have a Newcastle takeover, they're not competing for the Prem title.
8 to 12th place, man. That's where
they're going. And that's great for them. Maybe they squeak into a Europa, a UEFA Conference League spot, or a Carabao Cup final, or an FA Cup final, right? But realistically speaking, Steven Gerrard, I believe, will be able to help them attract kind of players that will lead to them having successful seasons to their standards. Yep. With no disrespect to Villa, I said they're a huge club. Finishing 8th, 12th place is very respectable in the Prem. And for them, I think they'll achieve it next season with Steven Gerrard. I think they'll finish 10th to 15th this season. Maybe up a couple spots next season.
Yeah, totally. I mean, speaking of clubs that were in danger of being 8th to 12th, let's move on to Tottenham, right, guys? They were in danger of it. They really were. But with Antonio Conte coming, I'm a little worried as a United fan, right? He was linked with Manchester United, but personally, I didn't think the glove didn't fit. I felt like he belonged to a team where he benefited way more defensively. And right now we see this sort of now where he's been getting the results in the Conference League. He's trying to grind it out with the Prem coming up. What do we feel like? How are we thinking about Conte? Because he's well known, right? He's had a plethora of jobs that we're familiar of him with. What do we see with Conte coming up with Tottenham right now?
Again, you're gonna bring. I hope it. Again, he made that mistake when he first was hired by Chelsea, right? He stuck to the 4-2-3-1. Didn't work out, right? They lost. What was it? They lost 1, drew 2, or something like that, or no, lost 2, drew 1, and they had that Arsenal game that's that 3-0 loss early in the season. And then he finally went back to his regular 3-5-2 or 3-4-3, just depending on his personnel. But I think the personnel that year was it Costa, Hazard, Pedro, Marcus Alonso, Moses, Matic, Fabregas. In the back was Aspilicueta, David Luiz, and there was one other guy I can't remember right now.
Cahill. It was Gary Cahill.
Was it Cahill?
Yeah.
Beast of a player, but anyway.
Yeah. Anyways, so again, that obviously gives you that defensive shape, right? But then we also talking about how to attack with that. But then again, you had an unbelievable squad, right? In that sense. And the best part of it, and I think the most important position in that formation, right, is that actual sweeper or the start of the attack, that center back and David Luiz, right, able to spray the ball wherever it needed to go, and he would push up to attack, right. So you're really looking at like a 2-5-5-3, right. That's what you're really looking at, and that gave the ability for Marcus Alonso and Moses to really stay wide and hug that line the entire time. And give Hazard and Pedro that inside false 9 movement in that area, almost just playing like 2 10s basically. I mean, if you really want to break it down to the best way, playing as 2 10s, and obviously Hazard is able to free roam a little bit more, and Diego Costa is just a hunter in the box. I mean, when you're providing that much width and that crossing ability in that sense, it's tough to beat in that area, and that's where they found success with. You got to have that left side of center back, that right side of center back to hold down the fort, while that center, if you want to call it a 3 or 2, whatever you want to call it, is able to push up into the midfield and really engage in that attack. Or again, because you got to have some coverage, right? Because if you're looking at it with those 2 fullbacks wide and you're having Hazard, Pedro, Diego Costa, Matic is going to go forward a little bit, right? Conte's going to clean it up at the back with whoever that center back is. So, that'll the attacking style will look like for Tottenham in that sense. That's what he should emulate, again, but defensively, they've been a mess, right? Tottenham, we've seen these big score lines and not so great cohesiveness in the defense, but I think Conte will really be able to kind of fix that. It takes time because he's not your usual pressing type of manager. He plays a zonal defense, right? They don't counter press, they don't aggressively press. They can either just let it come in, build the pressure, and they go back to the conventional 5. It's almost like 5 at the back, and then 4, and then 1. That's usually his defensive shape. So they don't aggressively press and counter press. They just come back down and get into their cohesiveness as a group.
Because one thing, I think the one tool that Conte has like advanced right now at Tottenham is a player like Christian Romero, right? he was someone at Atalanta who was that like ball winning, pushing up forward, like getting that ball out, getting into the CDMs. I think he's gonna love a player like him to help really shore up that defense. But I think he's gonna struggle trying to organize his fullbacks, right? Because he has a Royal Emerson and a Tanganga still, who are two really like well versed right backs in my opinion. But he's having like a slight issue readjusting Ben Davies back into that team, because right now he's seeing like off form with oh, why am I blanking? The Spanish left back from Tottenham.
Reguilon.
Yeah, Reguilon. Reguilon's been struggling ever since Conte came in now because he's like, again, these two left backs, they're not useful Conte's system.
Why are they gonna struggle?
Oh no, I'm just saying from what
very obvious. It happened the last time he was at Chelsea when his fullbacks was to struggle.
Well, I was just saying because the one thing that we've noticed is that that Reguilon, he's not really the best defensively, and he reminds me more of like a Marcus Alonso pushing up. But then again, for Chelsea, that's where a lot of his like great playing style would come in, because he would have an Alonso go up and just make attacking plays, and either a Matic or a Conte would fill in that spot for him though.
And best is gonna say it right now, Alonso's not a great defender.
No,
but
he's
he can
horrendous.
Still get the job done. Reguilon, on the other hand, is just not getting the job done defensively.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an Antonio Conte fan. The passion, the fact that when he arrived at Chelsea, he had a squad of players that weren't they were hit or miss, inconsistent. You know, we were going through a bit of a rough patch, right? Antonio Conte comes in, and besides Juve, who else was playing with three at the back at the time? Three center backs, right? No one. Antonio Conte comes in, shows, Europe and the rest of the world. I mean, you have club teams in the United States at the youth level playing three center backs all of a sudden because they see the success you can have. The issue is a lot of teams don't have the right personnel to play that formation and to play that system. But at Chelsea, he had it, right? He had all the pieces he needed to play that system. Marcos Alonso, defensively, suspect at times, yes. However, whoever wants to argue about Marcos Alonso not being arguably the best wingback we've seen in a very long time, it's what he does. He's put the ball on his left foot. He's gonna make something happen. The one beauty I think of in this Spurs squad for Conte is the guy up top playing the 9. At Chelsea, successful with Diego Costa, someone who can check in, hold up the ball, somebody who can finish if you put the ball in the box. At Inter last season, Romelu Lukaku got the job done. If I'm not mistaken, outscored Cristiano Ronaldo in the league.
Take it easy.
How he did it is
Take it
that
easy.
no,
hold on. I'm
sorry.
Right there.
Ronaldo outscored him, but he listen. Okay, sorry, Lukaku.
The one thing I will say though is that the way our Conte system works, he benefits from having someone who is either playing as like two strikers or someone who's like wide playing as a secondary striker. So for Chelsea, he had that Hazard, and for Inter, he had that Martinez, right? Martinez and Lukaku were that partnership for him. And with Chelsea, we saw that a lot.
2 10s, man. 2 10s. Pedro and Hazard, 2 10s.
Yeah, but we saw most of the goals come from Diego Costa and Hazard. That's the point I'm trying to make right now.
So for them,
we saw with Inter, we saw Martinez and Lukaku.
At Spurs, the way I picture working is Højbjerg, I'd love to see Dele Alli come back in and play next to Sonny behind Harry Kane in the double 10 position. The only thing I look at this Spurs team, and there's 4-5 players that I'd say, all right, can probably play on other squads in Europe's, top teams. But you look at the back line, right? And with no disrespect to them, they're quality players, but are they players you can look at and say, wow, they deserve to be in the top 4? Look at United, who's in a rough patch. You have Raphael Varane as kind of player playing in the center back role. Now, Harry Maguire has his critics and whatnot, but I take Harry Maguire, Varane, and Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Luke Shaw over the defenders available at Spurs right now. It's Eric Dyer, can play that center back role. Yeah, he's great with the ball, but he's the slowest center back in that squad. Ben Davies just getting readjusted to that team.
Because of that.
I think Antonio Conte is going to raid Serie A. Daniel Levy is going to have to open up his checkbook come this January, come the summer. Otherwise, I think they're a Europa League quality side right now. There's just too much competition in the Prem, and everyone's already seen Antonio Conte's system. I mean, I'm a Chelsea supporter. We run the three center backs right now, and Thomas Tuchel.
He does it way differently.
He does it differently, yeah, but they have the personnel. Spurs, on the other hand, I just don't see them having the quality player, A, and B, I just don't think Conte's style is going to suit them in the back half of the pitch. Going forward, Bergwijn, Højbjerg, Dele Alli, all the Sonny, Harry Kane, even Lucas, if you want to throw him out there, I think they'll do well going forward. But in terms of at the back, I think they're going to leak goals that they shouldn't be leaking, Recently, what was it? Leeds 2-1,
Yeah.
Not a horrible result. But look at some of the other teams in the league when, they go play it. Chelsea just beat Leicester comfortably after beating Juve in the Champions League 4-0 now. The other teams in England are really starting to pull away. The Liverpools, the Cities. Spurs have to get their act together, or they're going to face the same demise Arsenal has with Arteta. Now, you're bringing Antonio Conte in, who's more experienced, and somebody who's turned ships around before. I'm very skeptical to think they're going to get near the top four for the next year or two. I think they're a Europa League side.
Yeah. I think the biggest issue with Spurs was that in the summer they wanted Conte, but they didn't give him the option to buy players. They said, checkbooks off the table. You have to work with the team we had, and he said no. And this time around, supposedly, Daniel Levy has said, okay, look, you're going to have 100 million, 150 million to spend in January. Get whoever you think is the best option right now to help us out to get us out of this rut. But realistically, do you guys think 100 million, 150 is enough for this team right now? Because you have a Harry Kane who doesn't want to play for Spurs anymore, unmotivated. You have a Son who is the only real attacking outlet right now, with Lucas Moura finally coming back into that groove. You have a midfield where they can't decide who they want to play because they have the option of Lo Celso, Højbjerg, Ndombele. I
don't see this working out long term.
Unless
not
Levy,
even 2 years.
Unless Levy lets him do what he wants to do with that team and clear players out, nothing's gonna change. Nothing.
Tottenham's too English for that.
Yeah. If I'm Antonio Conte, I sit there and I look at it and say, let Harry Kane leave. He probably goes to a City. You're not going to stop that. A City.
It's 100 mil though, man.
Try to sell him somewhere. Maybe you push him off on a Real Madrid or somewhere else. He probably ends up at City. We've all conceded that City needs a 9. Harry Kane is the perfect kind of 9 to suit Guardiola, help him make a Champions League push. If I'm you get a great fee, add an extra 100 million to your transfer budget. I look at it and think Antonio Conte needs to clean house, right? Son and Lucas behind Harry Kane is okay. Do I think they're world beaters? Sonny's great, Harry Kane's great, but I just don't think they provide the right kind of
everything's average after
attributes. It's not the attributes necessary, right? I think he rates someone like Inter struggling financially. Go take a couple players you're comfortable with out of Inter. Go to some of these other Serie A sides that have, these gems.
Loads of young talent right now.
Gems.
Serie A is full of them.
I mean, look at someone like a Locatelli, right? He's unreal. And Locatelli is one of many you can go out and find in Serie A.
23 years old.
You can do the same in the Bundesliga. There's a lot of these players you can go and pick up in their early 20s that have years of top flight experience you can bring into the Prem relatively cheap. A lot of these Bundesliga sides will sell to Spurs instead of waiting for their best player to get bought by Bayern.
Leverkusen's got one gem they should get immediately. You know what I mean? You have that Leverkusen connection with Son already. You've got Florian Wirtz ready to just get out of there and break out. I think, in my
opinion, he's phenomenal.
I'm just worried for Wirtz because it's either he's gonna end up like a Havertz or a Brandt. Julian Brandt's been underperforming for Dortmund since he like has like left. Who's been like struggling to solidify his place in that Dortmund team, or he's gonna strive like a Havertz, right? Like find his role in a big team, play really well. But it's too soon to say for him to leave Leverkusen right away, right?
Well, and he's young, right? I mean, some people will say Havertz has struggled to adapt to life in England. I'd argue and say, he still needs to be given some time, especially playing in a system where you're not always going to get consistent playing time with Thomas Tuchel.
He's never in his natural position. He's a right midfielder.
Yeah, so it's
not a 10.
It's hard.
He's gonna struggle significantly.
I'm gonna say give him time, but I'm gonna back it and say, you know what, Spurs need not an overhaul, but they need another Højbjerg. They need players like that. Højbjerg is a phenomenal player, phenomenal. There's many more of those kind of players available. Where on 150 million, you can go grab 3-4 players that are going to get the job done and solidify some spots. Yeah. Right? They're not going to be 80 million pound purchases like Harry Maguire, but they'll get the job done.
Yeah. I mean, speak about getting the job done. Let's talk about Watford and getting the job done against United. Am I right? What a rough game. But Claudio Ranieri, we see it right now. He just took over for Watford, and he's been putting in a great shift with them, right? Like, we know his experience before. He's won the Prem with Leicester. That unbelievable season, unpredictable. The 4,000 to 1 odds against Leicester to win it. And like, he's a very experienced manager, right? He's like 70 years old. He's been in the game for a long time. He's won multiple titles. He's a very well-known coach. So what are we feeling about him at Watford?
Can I throw in the fact that, like, I've never met someone that doesn't like Claudio Ranieri. He's such a likable guy.
I know. He's
what
a guy.
He's the N'Golo Kante of managers. Nobody hates Kante. Nobody hates Ranieri. Ranieri can beat you in a World Cup final with coaching San Marino, and you're gonna applaud the guy.
That 2004 semifinal.
He's Ranieri. He's just one of those guys who, if you have the talent, what he brings in personality to a side, he's going to make a club and its players and its staff. He's going to bring a feel-good environment, which is often lacking in some of these Prem sides. Where at Watford they had the talent, they have the players for it. Bringing someone like Ranieri, I think, was top decision from the board. He listen. We've spoken about
attractive play.
He's probably going to jump into his 4-4-2. Yeah. He's going to hit you on the counter, but his team is going to get the job done. And honestly, they're going to have a great time doing it. They're not going to have to sit there and struggle and sit back and hope for the best. They're going to press you once in a while. They're going to sit a little deeper. You're going to try to play your way through them. They're going to be strong off the ball, strong on the ball. They're going to punish you when they can. And all around, Watford has a solid squad.
Yeah, agreed.
From keeper forward, Ranieri, I think he's there for the long term. I think Watford will remain mid-table for years to come under Ranieri, especially if they can continue to pull in the kind of names they're pulling. It doesn't shock me he had a big win at United. I think any team that underestimates Watford is going to feel the same thing. 100%.
Anyone that underestimates that man and the attractive style of football he plays is going to get burned, right? I mean, we just spoke about it with the counterattacking style that he likes to use, and it's very direct and over the top. I mean, he had that success with Vardy and Mahrez. I mean, how quick they were and how ready they were on an instant, right? Because when you're into that low, it's not really a low block, right? It's kind of sitting in there, having everyone play in front of the defense. I wouldn't say it's a low block where they're sitting in the goal almost. And then just set up as a 4-4-1-1, and Mahrez would just hang out under Vardy, right? But then next thing you know, you lose the ball, and Vardy and Mahrez are on the run, and they're rampantly quick. And that's what he's going to use, and that's what he's going to use to his advantage and expose teams with, is just that rampant pace. And again, it's what they do defensively is great because they're zonal. Again, he's similar to Conte. Bessel just said it right now. They're gonna press a little bit, not too much, because they want you to play into them, right? So they like to use that zonal defense to get into those passing lanes, cut off that passing lanes, and then transition immediately into that counterattacking style. So he's done it everywhere, and he'll continue to do it. And again, Watford, less expectations. He's had a little bit of a rough patch. Sampdoria last year that wasn't great. So he just needs a little bit of a rebound. I think Watford's the team, similar to Aston Villa, 8th to 12th place.
I was about to ask you, Arch, because so far he's had these like small stints in like a Sampdoria, a Roma, and then even before that, like a Nantes and like a Fulham. And like we know the Leicester City Ranieri, right? The way how he built that club up. But then we also know this Ranieri who's sort of been struggling from like 2017 onward to like put together solid teams that like want to play the football he wants, to get the players that he wants. Do we see this changing at Watford? Because we know they have talent. They have a Joshua King who's been performing well. They have the likes of Sar on the wing who's doing great. Emmanuel Dennis has been phenomenal. You have the likes of a Kong, a young Nigerian defender coming up. And then you also have the cycling GK himself, Ben Foster, like a guy
love
who's
that man.
love that man. He is a very well experienced goalkeeper trying to, like flow that team through, giving them like that way through. Do we think that he'll be able to properly stabilize this club, or is he gonna have to be worried for a relegation dogfight, or maybe have to bring them back up from the EFL?
I don't think
this is what I like. This is what I like in their side. Look at the team that beat United, right? Cleverly play next to Sissoko, just ahead of Luza. I can't pronounce his name. Lauza, 23, 22-year-old player in behind an experienced Cleverly and Sissoko, right? You have a good mix of talent, experience, youthfulness, and it's like that with the rest of the team, right? Ben Foster,
in the correct positions though, right? In the
yeah,
correct position.
exactly.
Got to be young.
The the wingers are young, skillful, pacey, good delivery from wide areas. Joshua King, who once again he is a Danny Ings kind of player. He's going to grab you goals, right? And if I'm not mistaken, they have a Chicharito on the they pull up off the bench, right? I believe Javier Hernandez is on their roster, if I'm not mistaken. No, it's not. It's Chucho Hernandez.
Yeah, Chucho. I was about
Sorry.
to say,
Yeah, Chucho.
He's still at LA
Don't
Galaxy
mind
now.
it.
I was about to say.
No, I was just watching U.S. national team Mexico. I was watching some of the greatest matches and stuff. I was looking up some of their games recently. Um, I hate and love Javier Hernandez at the same time, but so they have Chucho. They have a good mix, a very good mix. Now the question is, can they bring in the players necessary to help transition the older block of players out and kind of bring in a new era of youthfulness, right? Because Ben Foster's not getting any younger. I love everything he has to do with social media, but he's what, in his mid to late 30s, 37, 38.
He's also hinting at a stint in the MLS at the end of the season, right? Like he's mentioned it once or twice. He thinks he wants to just go to America for a few seasons and then boom, that'll be his career, So we don't know. Right?
Great for him. Yeah, it's great for him. I think Ben Foster is once again an Ashley Young type of player. Ben Foster just happens to be better in his position in his role right now, and a better goalkeeper than Ashley Young is, winger, fullback, whatever you want to call him. With no disrespect to Ashley Young, but Ranieri knows he can turn to Ben Foster or to Musa Sissoko or Tom Cleverley, who was at United for longer than I can remember, and say, hey, we need to get our act together. A couple of tough results here or there, or after a huge win against United, say, hey, let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's not even December yet. We have the likes. I believe their next couple of matches are Leicester, Chelsea, City. Maybe not in that order, but three of the big boys in a row. I'm not surprised if they come away with a surprise result somewhere there. But Ranieri, good decision on Watford's end.
Yep. And speaking of good decisions, guys, the Saudi owners buying out Newcastle, $300+ million to spend, do whatever they want, have fun, guys. Let's see what can happen, right? But the one thing that I've noticed, right, is I'm a little worried about them because they didn't bring in a board whatsoever. They don't have like a set board in. They don't have a director of football, but they have an Eddie Howe in. They thought, okay, right now we have a team where we're in a relegation dogfight. Steve Bruce, probably the worst manager to ever be in the Prem ever. Can't manage a team for the life of him. I'm being
be
serious.
nice to Brucey. Be
I
nice
know
to
he's
Brucey.
such a nice guy. He's a United legend, but he should not, like, just like Ole. They're interim managers. They should never be managing a team full time. Personally, like I know
That's
they're
low
smart.
expectations for him. He'll
Yeah,
bring up an
but
EFL side and stay
but
in really for a year or two, then go back down. But he's not a terrible manager. He's just a low expectation, steady manager. That's what he is.
what I
Yeah,
will say is that the great thing about appointing a man like Eddie Howe is that Newcastle needs to bring in quick talents that then they will perform. Eddie Howe is known very well to be able to recruit from like a local to like a EFL to a Premier League basis of, okay, these players X, Y, and Z will work. He can get them for like a cheaper price. Like Callum Wilson, for example. No one thought that Callum Wilson could be a star-studded striker in the Premier League. Like, and he got him for only $3 million from Coventry City, if I'm not mistaken. And from there, Callum Wilson like scored phenomenal amount of goals at Bournemouth to get him up into the Prem. Has been a solid Premier League striker for the longest time. So Eddie Howe knows how to put those pieces together. But I'm just more concerned of the way Newcastle being run right now for Eddie Howe, because I don't think he suits the way how the club wants to be run.
He's just interim, man. He's just interim until they start spending a bunch of money and getting the quality players that they want to bring. He just needs to keep them in a decent position where they can attract players, okay? And that's all he needs to do. Again, another
yeah.
guy with low expectations, right? And then it's similar to, it's funny how you have Ranieri and then we're going into Eddie Howe because it's the same thing. It's a 4-4-2, man. On a tactical analysis, and that's why, again, Callum Wilson, it, everyone everyone loves him because again, he's just a poacher with get it in the box and he'll do what he can. Again, another guy, 10 to 15 goals. That's all you're gonna need.
Yeah, I mean, I look at Eddie Howe, great at Bournemouth in his time and whatnot.
Yeah.
If you're a Newcastle side, first of all, I'd like to put my name in the hat for the director of football position if they're actually hiring. In case the Newcastle owners are watching Matchweek, the Matchweek podcast. But I just sit there and I think, if your objective is to be one of the big boys in England, is Eddie Howe going to help you be a big boy? No offense, no disrespect to Eddie Howe. He's the type of manager that he's like David Moyes, right?
Yeah.
Always destined,
right?
Always destined for one of those clubs that you're not expected to win the Prem title, but if you can compete for it, finish top 4 or 5, we're happy with you. If you can compete for the FA Cup, the Carabao Cup, get us a Champions League spot, you're a legend here. He did it at Everton. He took Marouane Fellaini, made him one of the best midfielders, one of the best players in the league. Didn't happen for Fellaini at United, but where he became a number 9 suddenly. But he look at West Ham is one of the most entertaining sides to watch in the Prem right now. They're flying. They're absolutely flying. Do I see Newcastle doing that? Honestly, he might bring a slightly better playing style, something maybe a little more attractive, maybe a couple new players. But I mean, Eddie Howe versus Bruce, I don't see the big difference. No, with no disrespect, he's a great manager. Maybe brings a more modern approach to the game. But honestly, I was kind of shocked. Like, listen, you're Newcastle. You have all this money. Isn't like Zidane on the market?
Yeah, but I think the one thing we have to understand here.
Offer him ridiculous money. Offer Thierry Henry ridiculous money. Offer one of these guys ridiculous money. Bring them in, and just bring Frank Lampard in and have him sign a half dozen players from some of the top teams in England. From something exciting. Eddie Howe, no disrespect, isn't exciting.
Well, on the contrary, Eddie Howe knows how to build a midfield and an attack. He knows how to piece those two together. there has been some great moments with that, but the issue is he was never able to build a defense.
4-4-2, man.
He was
You're
no
getting
listen.
the same thing every
Listen,
time.
may please listen. He does not know how to build a defense. On average, his Bournemouth team would concede around 67 goals a season. Just to show that they could never really piece together a great defense, he relied on the attack very heavily. And the issue we're going to see now is that a team like Newcastle is projected to concede 82 goals this season. And even if, let's say, an Eddie Howe can bring them back up to only conceding 67 goals, that's still nowhere near where this team would need to be competing anywhere. So I don't think Eddie Howe's a bad appointment. If I were Newcastle fans, I wouldn't expect him to be the permanent guy. You want someone better. You want to have a better system in place. You want better players because realistically, this whole entire team is rancid. You could swap everyone out but say Maximin and maybe Callum Wilson. Those are the two guys you're going to be relying on.
Yeah, and I think I personally got ahead of myself. I wanted this to be a FIFA career move where they go in and they pull Diego Simeone from like Atletico Madrid, right? And Newcastle returns to the top of the Prem. They're fighting. Listen, I mean, all of this excitement was around this takeover, and I guess we're gonna have to wait another month or so to see what happens in the January market. But I feel like there was all this hype behind this takeover, and it surfaced to Eddie Howe looking underimpressed at his own press conference. I think it was just underwhelming. We were waiting for Zidane's beautiful bald head to walk out into the press room, and it didn't happen. Or someone exciting like
for a while,
like Andre Villas-Boas, AVB, someone like who you don't expect. Who he's was.
Russia, isn't he?
I think now he might be a free agent now, which is like
he's still at a club. He's still at a club.
Chelsea, Spurs. He was Mourinho's protege, right? Like someone who, like you look at and go, oh wow, I would have never thought of AVB coming back. Eddie Howe, I thought he'd be managing like Stoke City.
See, I propose this for United. I think if you're any club right now and you need an interim to go into a director of football position, you go get a Ralph Ragnick. He stabilizes the team, figures out a plan for you. You throw him into director of football, and you bring in that big name manager. I think that's the solution for any team. But I know it's a Newcastle. It's obviously not going to happen. But this is what Newcastle needs right now. They need someone to come in, stabilize, make sure they don't get relegated, and then bring in the big guns. That's what they really need.
It doesn't work over here, man. The coach being the technical director and all that, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's very, very. You have to have the right environment for something like that to be successful, and you need places like. Listen, why does it work at Chelsea? Because their director of football or their players manager, whatever you want to call him, is Petr Cech. Petr Cech is the one that helps the board and Marina talk with Thomas Tuchel and the players and the rest of the coaching staff. You have him in that kind of position where, realistically, Petr Cech at 40 years old can suit up and play for 75% of the Prem sides right now. It's just the truth. You have a living legend at your club who's sitting in that role, who turns to the board and says, hey, get Edouard Mendy. This guy's a real deal. They pay next to nothing for him, and he has more clean sheets than he has goals conceded since he arrived at Chelsea. It's just
35 and 35.
Yeah, like it's unreal. Like when you have Petr Cech saying something like that, it's a little different. You have to have the right environment. Newcastle, like you said, they kind of brought in Eddie Howe, like, hey, all right, man, and a little pat on the back, good job. Good luck with this. Yeah, Newcastle would have been phenomenal with like even a Rafa Benitez. I would have loved to see at Newcastle.
Again?
He was there, but the issue is that
again
he wasn't given the money. They wasn't allowed to spend.
He wasn't allowed to do now anything. They have it.
It's different,
but now he's at Everton. What are you gonna do? I mean, we're gonna talk about him in a second because he's
my
at
boy
Everton,
Everton, baby.
But
that's my Premier League side.
But before we go to Everton, we gotta talk about Wolves. Wolverhampton Wanderers. Bruno Lage, a new guy on the scene. He's new to the Prem. He's I think realistically he's only had one job prior to this, just like a Gerrard at Benfica. The team has been like pieced together a little bit, but like he's been missing players to injury.
That was Porto.
No, it was Benfica. Yeah, so
he's Bruno Lage.
The biggest thing that worries me about Bruno Lage right now is that he's benching Adama Traore, where we're seeing him match his numbers from last season at already this point of the season, right? He's someone who's been exploding in how a lot of these teams have been playing and how a lot of them have been setting up now. He's been sort of like that monkey's wrench you could throw in, but yeah, he's not finding that game time. And I think I'm a little worried for a Wolves because they haven't really been able to piece together a strong team that we've seen in years prior, right?
When it comes to Wolves, it's underwhelming. I'm
sorry, they're not called Wolves. Portugal B.
Oh yeah. The Portuguese national B team is, I just look at it. Okay, he's not the youngest. He's in his mid-40s. He has experience, at Benfica, but Wolves, if I'm not mistaken, wanted to make a statement and kind of show that they need to be a regular in the Prem, want to be in the top half of the table, So I'm gonna wait before I judge Bruno Lage at all, just for the simple fact that Wolves do pretty well at pulling players and whatnot out of the unknown. And not say it's the unknown. Listen, Benfica is one of the largest clubs in the world. Let's not kid ourselves. It's Benfica. He was there for a season or two. But I'm gonna wait because it can go really right or it can go really wrong. And I guess we'll tell with what happens here. But yeah, I'm not gonna jump. I'm not gonna jump yet. I'm not gonna jump. I mean, he was able to win the Portuguese league, the Primeira Liga from Porto. That's something in itself. So I mean, we'll see. I tend to, Jose Mourinho, my favorite manager ever to this day in history. I have a thing for Portuguese managers, man. I'm going to wait and see what this guy does. I'm going to wait and see.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it comes from like their personality, I guess. And again, with Porto and things like that, obviously everyone talks about. He is a traditional 4-4-2 structure, I think, defensively. So then they come back into that 4-3, 1-2 option there. So, it's just curious to see what he's gonna do here. They were, again in the Portuguese league, a little bit more attack minded, right? Not really defensive minded. Premier League, a little bit more physical, tactically based in that aspect. So I'm curious to see what he does with it, with the width and the players that he has. I mean, Portuguese players are going to be a little pacey, good on really good on the ball. So I'm just curious to see what he does with it. Again, we're talking about a couple of consecutive teams right now that not big expectations, man. So takes a little bit of the stress of the job off. Your job is just to kind of stir the ship right and then keep it there. So curious to see what he does in the Premier League and how he transitions a lot of his attacking-minded stuff from Benfica to Wolverhampton. I think it's okay, but again, it's very direct, which is normal in England, right? England is known for the long ball, so I think he's somewhere near like the 6 or 7 long balls per game type of manager. So again, very direct, over the top, pacey, veterans in there as well. So he could see success with it with the fresh mind in there, but again, it's not aspiring to see like a Wolves team in 7th, 8th place.
I see him top 10. Because you have to look at with the reemergence of West Ham, Everton's going to fill in that spot. Leicester, 9th, 10th place. I mean, listen, I'm going to be very honest. His Ruben Neves, and João Moutinho, two of my favorite midfielders in the league. I love them.
He is an absolute animal.
And it's wonderful to watch. Listen, it's just hard to figure out because recently they beat West Ham 1-0, but lose to Crystal Palace, I think. So it's
Vera.
like, And I know hopefully we'll move on to Vera in a sec, right? But I just look at it and say, you know what? It can go either way, but once again, 8th to 12th place. I think Bruno Lage, he has the right team and he's the right kind of manager to finish this season out, test the water, see where they are. And listen, I'm not surprised if they pull in a couple players out of the Portuguese league who,
Absolutely.
2-3 quality players, maybe an unknown that ends up being pretty well. He knows the league. It's just that simple.
Yep, for sure. I mean, speaking about someone that knows the Premier League very well, we have to talk about Patrick Vieira, right? At Crystal Palace, came in this season. He's had a few jobs before this. At Nice, it was sort of a miss. NYCFC, it was a miss, and he worked with U19s for Man City, right? So
I wouldn't really say NYCFC was a miss, but
I mean,
it was okay.
I mean, for
the MLS, in order to be considered like a success coming into the Prem, at least winning the MLS Cup is seen as like, okay, you did decent there, right? If we're talking about being a Premier League level manager. But from what we've seen this season, he's sort of brought a refreshed, newly formed Crystal Palace team, right? They have gone through a little renaissance, and he's benefited from having the club poach some phenomenal players, right? Like he got an Edouard from Celtic, picked him up out of nowhere, pulled him. They have players who, let's say they're even injured right now. Other players like a Conor Gallagher from Chelsea, if I'm not mistaken, on loan, who's been performing out of his skin. I think he has the most assists, most tackles and interceptions, most creative plays. Like he has supercharged numbers right now. And when we see someone new like a Vieira, where like it's Gerrard right now, we don't know what to expect from this manager. What are we feeling from him right now?
A lot of possession-based soccer, and that's what he's gonna love, right? He'll probably bring a 4-3-3, or he'll just go back into the traditional 3-4-3, 3-5-2 that we're seeing. And it's funny because football it's a revolving door. The 3-4-3, 3-5-2 was big with my boys in the '80s. AC Milan really brought that to light and dominated with that formation, right? And that's just how it works. I think he's a little bit different compared to everyone else. They'll have the wingers on the width as the 7 and the 11, but they'll just have them inverted and allow those attacking fullbacks to go further. And just have those guys. You just have wingers of that nature, right? That like to come inside, like Zaha loves coming inside and getting his right foot around the ball. So again, it's going to be a little normal, just depending on what he wants to do. I think they should probably stick with the 4-3-3, because then they'll be able to attack in a better manner, in my opinion. I think with a 3-3-3-1, you can label it like that, where you have those inverted wingers in there and just helping out in that sense. But it's going to be a little interesting. I think so. Again, it's just that running theme. Crystal Palace was a little below average, right? They were a little lower than they should be. I think they're on a good day, 12 to 16 team. You know what I mean? You'll see them in the Premier League. They're gonna have one of those games where they beat the Big Four, Big Five, if you want to call them that. It's out of nowhere, right? But you're not expecting them to do them all the time. And I think as long as they beat up on those teams that are relegation ready and those teams that are below them, it'll be good. Again, I see them in that 12 to 16 spot actually, rather than that 8 to 12 area.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree and say I think they're 10th place ish. And the reason for this is here's a huge shout out to Sam Allington. Been a mate of mine for a while. He's playing for FDU now, the college I'm the assistant coach at. He's big old number 9 kid from London, huge Palace fan. I have to hear him drone on and on and on about Palace all the time. Typically complaining, but right now they're sitting in 10th place, right? And I look at it and I think, all right, Mark Gahey, if I'm not mistaken, was the championship player of the year last year, or the young player of the year. Chelsea Academy product. He's in his early 20s, beginning of his career, dominant center back. Good on the ball, good in the air. He's the kind of player who you can have in your side for a decade. And, I don't think he lasts at Palace that long. I think he'll get picked up by a bigger team. But then you look at Conor Gallagher, who you mentioned, who recently came out in an interview with Rio Ferdinand and said, my goal is get back in at Chelsea. Quality player, elite mentality. Another one of another Cobham boy who, like you said, performing out of his mind again, even against some of the big boys, right? Was it City where he had a very good game against City recently?
Phenomenal against City.
Okay. And then like you look at a front nine of Jordan AU, whatever, Christian Benteke.
Besmir, if you don't mind, just make sure you stay closer to the mic.
Sorry,
just so the audience can hear you well.
So, no problem. I know, and they really do want to hear me, right? But like Jordan AU, Christian Benteke, and one of my favorite players to watch is Wilfred Zaha. Yeah. He's had his drama. I'm leaving Crystal Palace. I'm staying. I'm leaving. I'm staying. I think they're the kind of squad that we spoke about earlier, who they have a good mix of youth and experience, to where they can give us a couple upsets during the year, like Arch said. They'll give us a couple upsets. There's players who can help them play. Milivojevic, Gallagher in the midfield with Kouyaté. That's a quality Prem midfield.
And plus, you have Eze coming back from injury soon, which is going to be a really interesting aspect.
Now, the one thing I see is Palace conceding goals that they shouldn't be conceding. They're going to leak goals. Leak goals.
That's why I think they're going to be less than 10th place, man. He's not a good defensive coach in that aspect.
Yeah, and I think, and it's surprising that, it's Vera, right? He's was playing just about a decade ago, right? Just over a decade ago, he retired about a decade ago. But the one thing I'm going to say is, listen, Benteke can finish in the box. People either love him or hate him. If I'm Patrick Vera, I turn to everyone and say, hey, get the ball into our midfielders' feet. Let them find our wingers. They're going to be they're 1v1. They're stellar. They're going to find Benteke in the box. They're going to score goals. They're not going to thrill. They're not going to have a million games where they're scoring 3, 4, 5 goals. But you know what? They're going to do all right. They mid-table. For them, that's successful. Staying in the Prem, being comfortable in the Prem is their goal, I believe. And listen, they're going to pull results. I mean, they beat, Man City got red carded, but they beat City recently. They tied Leicester. They just, Burnley, who's hit or miss, depending on the game, a big 3-3 draw. So for them, they're pulling results. They beat Spurs, who, they're Spurs this year. But they beat Spurs 3-0. Spurs and City and tying Leicester. For me, 10th, 11th, even 12th place is fair for them. They finished 9th. Good on them. It's going to be those big games, yes, but like Argjend said, beat up on those teams that that are giving up. Especially once we hit March, April, who know there's no chance of us staying up. Vieira, Crystal Palace, they'll be okay. They're going to be Prem stalwarts. They'll be here for a while.
I think before we move on from Vieira, the one thing I do have to give him credit for is that he's been very risky with the way how he's been rotating and putting players on, because he's been able to find a well-balanced way of having Benteke and Edouard perform at the same time, right? Like, they're two players who are expected to be starting number 9s. Benteke, we've seen him in the past at Villa where he was playing phenomenally, 15 plus goals. Goes to Liverpool, struggles a little bit, but obviously has that iconic bicycle kick against United, right? All of these players always make a moment. And then at a place like Crystal Palace, has been struggling a little bit in and out. But now we see him sort of rotate around, be like in and out with some other players. And we've seen Vieira just be very experimental with his team, where a lot of the managers would try to play safe, like, oh, I want to keep this job. I want to make sure we stay up. Like, he's been very, very risky, and I think he does deserve credit for that.
Benteke's just been utilizing correctly. Aston Villa, he's your hold-up 9. Liverpool, they want to get him in behind. It's not his game. It's just not his game. Same thing with Crystal Palace, that forward, long ball over the top. It's not him. He's a holding 9. Utilize him that way, and you're going to have great success with him, which we're seeing now.
Yep, totally.
Yeah, personally, I'm a Benteke fan. I like watching the guy play. He's a good, big old-fashioned number 9. Give him the ball. Let him be marked. Let there be a guy in his back. He's going to turn the defender. He's going to slot a winger through. He's going to turn, beat the guy, put a shot on goal. He's he's going to hold the ball up for your 10 or your 8 to come and get it. He's he's a quality prem forward. He's someone who's going to grab your 10, 15 goals, hopefully. And Palace will be okay. Palace will be okay.
10, 15 goals from him, double digits with Zaha in terms of assists and goals together.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, goal contributions will play a big part. I mean,
and that's all you need. That's mid-table, right? 2 players to pull, some magic out. Conor Gallagher doing his job from the back, from the midfield. Stringing some things through, stringing some passes in the midfield, slotting them through. Jordan Ayew, good for half a dozen goals a year. The Palace will be okay. They have the weapons going. They have the weapons going forward. I'm not worried for them.
And you see Bessel's 9-10 place. You don't drop them very quickly.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, totally. I mean, speaking about being a winner and looking like a winner, we're going to take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsor, ITA Sports, where if you want to be on that pitch, you have to look like a winner first to win a game, am I right? So let's just take a quick break and hear from our sponsor. Hello, guys. How are we doing today? I'm sorry. I know I had to stop the podcast and give you guys an ad read. Already stop it. Look, I have something very important to tell you about, okay? We are sponsored by ITA Sports. Yes, that's right, ITA Sports. Now, you guys are wondering, what's an ITA Sports? What do they offer for you? Well, they're a local business based out of Boonton, New Jersey, where they're on Boonton Main Street, if you guys even want to check them out. And what they are is a place where you can either get some cool, different apparel than your like average Adidas or Nike, Under Armour, Puma, that jazz. And they go more with like the Arayas, the Yomas, the Hummel. And how can we forget the Umbro? Guys, they have way more to offer than I can even list off. All you have to do is go to itasportshop.com. That's itasportshop.com. itasportshop.com. And if you're a team or a business, local business, any team, they actually do wholesale apparel orders for you, as you can see on screen if you're viewing, but if you're listening, I'll describe it even better. They make apparel that is best and fitting for you, that is comfortable, and even so, sometimes the price is better than what you'll get from actually trying to get an Adidas or a Nike or anyone else. And all you have to do is just go to itasportshop.com. And then now, guys, hey, you know what? In the future, they might have some promos or some more stuff for us to give away and work with, but we have to see how we do this episode for the ad. So please go check it out. Go see it because they have really cool stuff to offer. I'll see you guys later. Bye. And we are back from our little commercial break. A little ad read went on, I'm like all good with it, promoting our ITA Sports. We love them, always helping us out over here. But to continue on, talking about someone who's trying to help others out, we have Raphael Benitez at Everton. And I think there's no need for an introduction with him, right? We all know he's a top-class manager. He's like won the La Liga twice, FA Cup, Community Shield, Champions League runner-up, as Argjend would know from back playing against Milan. Won the Europa League, EFL Championship as well, Supercopa, FIFA World Cup, you name it, man's done it, right? FIFA Club World Cup, sorry. Like, he's been all over with the way how he's coached and managed teams. So what do we think with him being appointed to Everton this time around, back in Merseyside, but except it's blue and not red?
Personally, listen, I'm a Chelsea fan. I'm supposed to be nice to our former managers, but I'd be lying if I said it's easy in this case, because when was the last time Everton won a match? When was the last time Everton won a match is the one thing I have to ask. It's Artie, I don't know if you want to go and check that. I don't think they've won a match in like a month and a half or something like that. Has
been great.
I think of Benitez and I think of what's his playing style. When he was at Chelsea,
4-2-3-1.
Yeah. He's the kind of manager that's going to come out and say, all right.
I have an answer for you. His last win was September 25th against Norwich, and then it's been a draw loss, draw. He just drew against Tottenham, and then he lost against Man City 3-0.
So,
love it.
Honestly speaking, you look at it, of all these managers, Benitez up there with Ranieri, most experienced, right? You never know you're going to have Benitez. He's always going to be a character. He's always going to very polarizing figure. I mean, he's someone who said, I love Liverpool, and then went to the other side of Merseyside, you know? Probably going to draw big name players, probably going to be able to draw some players to the club. You know, he's about the right nowadays. He's that caliber. He's that caliber of coach. I don't think he's good enough to manage any of the big six or so in England. It's I just don't know what to say. You know, I just don't see Everton are, or they wish they were, what West Ham is now. You know, and
Everton, I do have to say, Everton's been suffering from a lot of injuries, and it's a lot of trying to rotate, find new players, deal with stuff, because Raphael Benitez wasn't left with the squad with the best shape after Carlo Ancelotti, right? Ancelotti left. He's like, "Oh, I'm done here. I don't care anymore about what's gonna go on. You figure it out." And he went over back into Italy, right? So it's sort of been trying to like put the puzzle together from different puzzles. You know, he's getting pieces from different puzzles and trying to put it into his own puzzle. You know, it's been very difficult.
Yeah, I just think there's the one player I really think needs to get out of there. That's Richarlison. Anyone that knows me knows I'm a massive Richarlison fan. You know, listen, the fact that he's on an underperforming Everton team and continues to get calls up to the Brazilian national team says something about him. You know, the national team staff see something in him. You know, I see him in a very, I'm not comparing to Mbappe's level or ability, but a very similar type of player, possibly being a little more physical, right? I think Richarlison is suffering in this Everton side. If you put Richarlison on any of the 6 or 7 top teams in it, put him on West Ham. Put him on West Ham. He's really scoring well. 3 times the number of goals. He's a quality player suffering in the system. No offense to Andros Townsend, but how much help is Andros Townsend going to be? Or Fabian Delph, who spent years playing left back at City under Pep. You know, slot him into the midfield behind poor Richarlison, and what are you going to get? You know, I honestly think Everton might start to trend downwards. You know, I think what Everton was for a very long time, in that team that was just outside the pack, that you had to be very scared of, is now West Ham. You know, I see West Ham as that 8th team in England that really, you know, can pop up in an FA Cup final and be very hard to beat.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
Everton's lost their swagger. Right? There's no more James McLean. There's no more of this Marwan Fellaini and whatnot. You know,
like the McGeady Road, no more.
Oh, you know, there's a lot of this.
Coleman's old as well. You know what I mean? Leighton Baines is no longer there. Jaelka. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about fantastic veterans, fantastic players. They're in their prime, and you know, there was always that top 6 squad where Lukaku shined, Barkley shined, and everyone that was there shined. It was
Rooney came back.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we don't want to talk
you
about
had Lennon, Morelos as well. I mean, what a squad that was in the first place. But in terms of Rafa Benitez, it's the same thing. You know what I mean? There's no revolution behind his game. It's the same 4-2-3-1 you're gonna get every single time. Same tactics. You're gonna get found out. I mean, yeah, he's extremely successful at Liverpool in the beginning. You know, had an amazing squad with him as well, and but again, over the years, you're gonna get found out, and that's what I think Mourinho is going through as well. You know what I mean? The special one is getting found out as well. So I think he's in that sense of managers that are just keep getting found out and need to adapt their game and change a little bit. Again, offensively, it's the same thing over and over again with the 4-2-3-1. Again, wider position, crossing, which is not really Everton's type of deal. Again, counterattacks, long balls forward over the top, aggressive in that sense is what Everton's used to. And then again, defensively, you're looking at a 4-5-1 or 3-4-3 is how they come into the block on a 4-2-3-1. So it's going to be interesting. Again, he was trending downward at Newcastle because prior to that, he was at Real Madrid and fired in 3 months, man. So
I think Newcastle was a different story because the owners at the time, they didn't want to give him anything to work with.
Again, yeah, of course. And
Like,
you mentioned that before, and I understand. But again, with a manager of that caliber, it doesn't matter. You can take a couple scrubs and make it happen. Your boy Alex Ferguson did it in a final and won.
yeah, but after so long, Benitez, he brought him back up from the championship. He did so much for that team where it gets to a certain point where if you're going to keep selling players, have no one come up from the youth academy, not bring in any players, he's going to struggle. And like, for example, we see with this Everton team, he's been struggling with injuries. He's been struggling with the likes of Gylfi Sigurdsson going through some things off the field to take him like
I understand, but I mean,
picture,
a great stat that I actually read today was absolutely hilarious in regards to AC Milan. In the 105 games that Stefan Pioli has had for AC Milan, he has had 3 matches, I think, where he's had full availability of his squad and who he wants to pick with. Already this season, he's had 2 games with 9 players out, 4 games with 8 players out, 6 games with 5 starting players out. So, and guess what? They got their first loss of the year last week in the league. It doesn't matter, man. When you're that caliber of a coach, you got to figure it out. I'm sorry, but it's the same thing over and over again. You got to change. You have to revolutionize. Your game's going to be found out and you're going to get exposed. And you're turning an Everton squad that's 6th to 8th place into something that's not looking too hot. And the project's just going to get worse and worse. And I understand that Ancelotti might have not left the team as great as he had wanted it, but you can't complain. You still have fantastic players in that squad. I'm sorry. Again, we just spoke about Richarlison. Fantastic player. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, a guy that's going to give you 10, 15 goals.
But
Okay.
he's been now injured.
Yeah. Again, you got to find the next person steps up, even if it's someone that's behind you. It's your job. You got to be able to do something like that. And in terms of that sense, I mean, Andre Gomez as well, dude. Fantastic midfielder. So I feel for you, but you got to figure it out. You have to. And he's used to having firepower and star power, and it's time to get used to not being there anymore.
Yeah, to piggyback off that, right? I think Rafa is the type of manager who, and I'm telling you this now, 20 years from now, when I'm 45 years old in the Prem, they're going to pull up this podcast and they're going to attack me about this when I'm on the brink of losing my first Prem job. All right, so remember that. Timestamp it. Rafa is the type of manager who you need to bring in to steady the ship at a big club. Okay, Simeone leaves and no one's available at Atleti. You bring Rafa in, manage the superstars, calm them down, get them to keep doing what they're doing, or you bring him to a struggling side who has fallen off like a Newcastle in the championship, who you need to come in, set the standards, kind of give the younger generation of players who think they're all superstars a kick in the butt. Bring some of the old school back into it. I don't see him as someone who's going to adapt and revolutionize or come up with something brand new to really kickstart a club and have them go from mid-table to top. Right? I don't. They call what your special sauce. I don't see him having the same specials. We spoke about Ranieri. He was at Leicester. He was probably. I think you mentioned it last week, right? He was probably the special sauce and all that. And what he was able to pull out of his players and have them fight and die for each other on the field, and kind of get them clicking and running on all cylinders. I look at Rafa and I don't think the Everton job suits him. I still think, listen, his resume speaks for itself. His accolades are longer than a list of ingredients in most of the food we eat, right? So Rafa Benitez, he's someone who you know what you're going to get, but I don't think Everton's the place where they're going to get it. He's someone that at an Arsenal, right, where I think if he was Arsenal, they might kill him after being a Liverpool at Everton and whatnot. But hey, Mourinho been at Chelsea twice, and he's now been at United and Spurs as well, and he's on his second Serie A team now. So, one day I won't be surprised if he ends up at Barcelona. So,
money is money, man. And you need a job at some point.
Yeah, Mourinho's worth 95, 100 million euros for that reason. Good for him. Love that man. But anyway, I see Benitez as Arteta leaves. Benitez is the type of manager you need to bring in at an Arsenal. They're not going to be able to pull in a Zidane or someone, even like an Antonio Conte. Spurs are lucky to have Antonio Conte. He's the kind of manager that should be at an Inter Milan, at a Chelsea, at an Atleti. He's, no offense to Spurs, no offense to them. Brand new stadium.
Downgrade.
The squad isn't what he had at Inter or what he's had at Chelsea or Juve. It's just my opinion. I'm just a guy with some headphones on speaking on a podcast right now. I'm not an expert, but for me, Benitez, not the right fit. I just don't think it's the right fit. Not a bad manager, not a bad club, not the right fit.
And again, when you're coming up from the championships of the Premier League, getting that big money coming up, so I don't want to hear that. I want to hear that issue. You get promoted,
they have money. Yeah, all these.
But
all these clubs have money.
But just to tie the knot in that Newcastle talk, right? It's that I think Newcastle's finally happy to get out of this Mike Ashley ownership, where it was like very toxic ownership of the stadium never really being taken care of, the training ground starting to deteriorate, the money just being drained out of the club, sponsorships just coming in because he's like part owners or something like that. I think it was just Newcastle was suffering from terrible ownership, and now it's like, what we just spoke about with Eddie Howe. Now they have like a whole bunch of money to spend and reinvest in the whole entire club if they do it right. So I think Rafa went at Newcastle at the wrong time, whereas if Rafa Benitez came in now, it'd be a different story, where he'd be more fortunate.
Yeah, I mean, it's too late. Newcastle fans already hate Benitez. Rafa is basically Satan at Newcastle at this point, which I feel for him, but he's a polarizing figure. You know what you're getting with Rafa. Half the fans, half the supporters are gonna like him. The other half are gonna wish they didn't know who he was. So,
usual.
Everton, I don't think he lasts. Maybe the season, maybe, but a year's time from now, we'll be on a podcast again talking about a new set of managers, and Benitez's name will be probably at some other club.
Well, that's the issue, right? We talk about all these new managers and people who can get and stuff like that, and in recent talks, they're always throwing up a Zidane and stuff like that, but realistically, I don't ever see a Zidane coming to an England. Personally, I think he either goes to the PSG.
The only spot he can go to in England is United because of the attacking football.
That's but he doesn't speak English. He doesn't care about living in England. He doesn't like the weather. His family doesn't want to move. Like, these are things we don't take into consideration sometimes, right? And as Zidane, he's not going to care about learning the English. Yeah, but a PSG who supposedly he's going to take over after Pochettino have a lot of money too.
Well, I think he goes to PSG. I would never say no. Listen, having Zidane and Messi on a poster together, let's be real.
Money.
He's at PSG. United's one of the biggest clubs in the world. There's very few clubs that can hold the same stature as United does. And once again, it pains me to say that. I'm a lifelong Chelsea supporter, but it's the truth. Being able to manage at the Theatre of Dreams, Sir Alex Ferguson giving you a call, I don't care who you are, you could be Zinedine Zidane. With no disrespect to Zidane, what Ferguson is amongst managers in history, Zidane is up there, but Ferguson's arguably the greatest to ever do it. He's the Tom Brady of managers. All right. Zidane, arguably, he's my favorite to ever play the game. To ever grace the pitch. He's been amazing, a legend. But Sir Alex Ferguson gives you a call, you come running. Mourinho did. Mourinho took that job and he did much better than he probably should have with that United squad. When Ferguson calls you, it's either you answer or he throws a hairdryer at you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that simple,
Yeah,
So Zidane probably ends up at a PSG.
Yep.
A City. I wouldn't be surprised if he's at City once Pep's out. It'll happen. It'll happen. Zidane's not done. He's not going to go to Real for his third stint yet. Maybe in a decade. But
I think he's pretty much done with Real Madrid in that sense. But
he'll be successful at these other clubs. I'm certain of it.
Yeah, sure.
He's going to play good attacking football, and he's able to manage all these personalities. That's Zidane's strong suit. When Zidane comes up to you and tells you and criticizes you, what are you going to turn to Zidane and say? Show me if you know better. Yeah, he will. He'll probably do it better than you can. It's Zinedine Zidane.
Yeah.
He'll be okay, but and let's be real, he's never managing at Everton. I'm sorry to all of the Merseyside-Merseysiders listening to this. You're not getting Zidane.
Yeah, never, no. But speaking about there being a never, I think Norwich never win any game in the Prem is very likely, right? With them just picking up Dean Smith, who just left Villa. Dean Smith, I think unless he gets that backroom staff he has and he somehow does miracle work with this Norwich team, it's automatic relegation. Like there's no Timu Pukki to try and save you this time around. He's not performing. Rashika barely not like gelling well to the Premier League. Our fellow American Johnny Sargent, come on. He's trying. He's getting a couple goals here and there, scoring, but it's not enough. I don't think this team's gonna make it. I don't think they're gonna make it through.
Yeah, but look at it.
Probably not.
But look at it, right? Norwich, who first of all, Dean Smith, absolutely disrespectful. What happened to him at Villa?
Yeah, for sure.
They did a good job. Everyone who knows me knows I'm a diehard John Terry supporter. Will be till the end of time. If John Terry, the stories he tells of Dean Smith and what Dean Smith did to steady the ship and bring Villa into the Prem and hold them steady in the Prem isn't talked about enough. He did a good job. You look at some of the results some of these other managers are pulling. How is Benitez still at Everton? If Dean Smith gets let go for losing a couple matches at Villa, how is Benitez still at Everton? And when you look at it, Leicester's on 7 points more, and they're halfway higher up the table than Norwich is. It's a couple results. At New Year's, once we've played another 5 matches, anything can turn. Maybe it's a rejuvenated squad, a new manager, the hopes of some money being splashed in the January transfer market. There's a lot that can happen, and their schedule. You have Norwich, Newcastle, Spurs, United, Villa. 5-6 matches where teams are so right now, okay form, but winnable matches. And I really wish Dean Smith the best. They beat Southampton recently. I was happy to see that. I obviously have a bit of a soft spot for them considering Josh Sargent, the Albanian who represents the Kosovo national team, Rashika.
Yeah.
Pukki has one of the greatest songs of any footballer alive.
Most definitely.
He's once again though, Billy Gilmore, young quality. Billy Gilmore picked up a man of the match performance in his Champions League, Premier League, and FA Cup debuts for Chelsea. Yeah. He's someone who's going to be a staple in the Chelsea lineup in the next few years.
I have to say for Dean Smith, he does have some talent to work with, right? He has the Max Aarons at right back, who's been on the radar for a lot of clubs for a long time. He has the likes of a Brandon Williams from United, who's been putting in starting performances, and now he's on loan at Norwich and trying to do his best. And he has the likes of a Norman, who's been trying to do well in that defensive mid role. Billy Gilmore, as we talked about. Even like the Pukki or Rashika. Todd Cantwell is finally going to make his resurgence back into this team, right? Because he had a falling out with Daniel Fark and how he was sort of demoted to the U23s, and now we're going to see a big talent like him get back into the team. So there's a lot of talent there. It's just the issue of getting them to turn it around, right?
I think he'll be able to turn it around, honestly. I forgot what the squad even looked like, so I just had to pull him up real quick, and I totally forgot how well balanced they actually are.
They have Tim Krul in net. I mean, what else do you need? Hold, hope for the best. Anyone goes through one goal, you trip them from behind, give up a pen. Tim Krul saves it. You hit on the counter. Billy Gilmore slots a perfect through ball. Pookie scores. You win 1-0. I mean, they might as well give me the job. Get Dean Smith out of there. Hire me. I just gave you a Premier League winning strategy. Give Pookie the ball.
I mean,
Besmir, when you say get Dean Smith out of there, do you mean Dean Smith the goalkeeper or Dean Smith the manager? Because there's two Dean Smiths on their roster.
Both of them.
both of them out. Both of
them. I
mean,
it looks pretty good in retrospect, right? Now that you're really looking, I mean, Ozan Kabak, is obviously injured right now, but getting him into the squad and Grant Hanley, I like those center backs right there. Brandon Williams on the left would be nice. Max
Ben Gibson, right? I like Ben Gibson.
Yeah, I like him a lot.
Experienced, he's going to get the job done in the Prem.
And he'll hold the line.
Hopefully.
And then that's the biggest thing about holding the line in this type of play now. I like the Billy Gilmore. I like Todd Cantwell. I'm a little bit of a fan of him. I like him on the left. And then, again, you go to Rashika, Sargent, Pookie. I mean, it looks good as to what he's going to be trying to do anyways, right? Again, with those nice forwards and Brandon Williams and Aaron's on the right and the left, it's going to be great with pushing up that further. He's going to ask a lot of the midfielders, and that's where Gilmore and Cantwell are going to have to really provide that attacking threat, because that's what made Grealish and that's what Grealish as good as he was and why they spent so much for him. But in retrospect, you're looking at what Grealish and who was it, McGinn, right? That were there during that prolific time that they were the highest dribblers, I think, in the Premier League during that time. So he's not looking to ask a lot of his forwards other than just be in the box and score, but he's going to ask a lot of those midfielders. So and they're young. So I think this is a pretty good spot for him, and I think a little bit different than Villa, but it seems like he could still get the job done, especially with the young guys that we just named off that were all 21 to 23 years old, man. I mean, that's fantastic with those young guys in that young core, all on loan, looking to play minute after minute after minute, and that consistency in there. Get back like 2 injuries they have again, get Ozan back, and it looks like a pretty decent squad. Again, with his traditional 4-3-3 or 4-3-2-1, 4-2-3-1. Sorry, is what he played at Aston Villa anyway. So, just gonna look into getting those crosses into the box with Pookie. Again, Pookie's a poacher. That's what we saw in that little bit of a run that he had, and these types of managers love poachers. Even though they're not Inzaghi, the greatest poacher of all time. But I'll just leave that there. But I can see him succeeding with Norwich and getting them out of relegation and keeping them in the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I mean, where I think they will be successful or can be successful is you have a couple players that can pick out a pass in the midfield.
Yeah.
I would almost say a front line of Cantwell, Josh Sargent, and Rashika, right? With the likes of, I can speak for Billy Gilmore because I've seen him play. He's a similar type of player to Fabregas, right? Where the quick transition, win the ball back, first pass, can we play the ball forward? Play that through ball. You're gonna have pacey front three. I think they'll catch a lot of teams on the back foot. Quick transition, get the ball up the pitch, see if we can isolate our wingers against fullbacks. See if we can slot, our forward in. Realistically speaking, I think they survive. I'm gonna go out on a limb, and I'm gonna say Norwich is the team that survives from the current teams in relegation.
That was my question. I was about to say. For just to sort of tie a nice little bow on this episode. Out of all the managers we mentioned, who do we think is going to perform the best with their teams at this current moment? Just as a slight little prediction, something I could flash back to in a future podcast and say you're smart or wow, you were dumb. Why did I even invite you? Just this nice little clip I could pull back. Who we think we're gonna perform the best out of the managers we mentioned, because we have Steven Gerrard, Antonio Conte, Claudio Ranieri, Eddie Howe, Bruno Lage, Patrick Vieira, Raphael Benitez, and Dean Smith.
I have a question. Are we allowed to say ifs? If Antonio Conte is backed by Spurs, I think he'll eclipse like what Arsenal is at right now. I think for him, success is 5th place. Exceeding expectations, 4th place. But when I look at the managers we've spoken about, it's honestly it's hard. I mean,
I'm gonna go with Gerrard.
Yeah, I might.
I'm gonna go with Gerrard and Aston Villa.
I think I'm just gonna be the one outside the box. I'm gonna pick Patrick Vieira for Crystal Palace. I think he might be able to do something with them.
And I mean, in which case, as much as I want to say, I mean, I know I don't want to say Eddie Howe, but I think it would be absolutely hilarious if he proved everyone wrong and somehow managed to pull Newcastle out of relegation. I mean, 6 points, 12 matches. You know what? Hey, I'm taking a risk. I'm going to say, hey, screw it. I'm going Eddie Howe, Newcastle. They go out and they buy Messi from PSG in January, and Newcastle turns around, wins the FA Cup, and finishes top 4. But no, I'd love to see Newcastle do that, but I mean, I still don't think it's going to happen. I want to say Spurs finish. No, I'm going to go Wolves. I'm going to go Bruno Lage. Unknown entity. I have no idea who this man is. So I'm going to put my faith in him. You know, hey, listen, the last time an English club pulled out a recent champion from Portugal, I mean, every time they do it, they seem to be pretty damn successful. So Bruno's got the Portuguese national B team has my vote.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with Aston Villa. I think Gerrard's gonna do some pretty good things with them. I think they're set up pretty good defensively and as well in the midfield. I think in this winter transfer season, we'll probably see them pick up an attacker or two even. And honestly, I think they look like the side to me that will probably prove a couple people wrong. And again, Gerrard had a good record in Scotland. Again, I just don't know if it'll transfer over, but just seeing that first game, it looked pretty well. It looked a lot more structured. So curious to see how it ends up. But I think in terms of current position, they should be okay. And maybe a surprise here or there. Maybe that's the dark horse.
Yeah, sounds great, guys. Really appreciate it. Any final thoughts? Anything else you guys want to talk about? Because I am more than happy to wrap it up if you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, well, I'm just gonna go out there and say none of these guys are Thomas Tuchel.
All right, and we're done. I'm just joking. Continue.
Now I just want to say Thomas Tuchel came into Chelsea and did exactly what Chelsea needed. Didn't try to make drastic changes. Brought some energy, rejuvenated the squad. I mean, let's be real. Yeah, they bought Lukaku, who hasn't done much so far this season. He pulled a couple goals. All right, great. But he was able to find a system that fit Chelsea, one that worked with the squad, something that made them serious again. He took them from maybe not qualifying for the next round of the Champions League to winning the whole thing with the best defensive record we've ever seen aside, 4 goals conceded, and now having only conceded 6 goals this far into the Prem. And, I think Antonio Conte can do something similar at Spurs. But sometimes it takes a lot more just common sense than some of these managers try to revolutionize the game. Xavi steps into Barcelona. Those 10 rules that have been circulating the internet. How crazy are those rules? Great, you're a professional footballer. Show up 90 minutes before training. Whoa, man, what a shame. Like, come on, man. They
laughable. In a sense.
Yeah,
it really is.
It's simple stuff. And you really have to start to wonder. Do we maybe put too much blame on the manager sometimes, and maybe the players just have to start performing a bit more? In a world where social media runs rampant, are we too quick to blame the managers for everything? The managers we spoke about, the 6 of them are well reputable, experienced. I guess being, a coach, manager myself, I'm quick to defend other ones. but let's just say I'm curious to see how these guys do. I think I think there'll be some surprises in store. But as always, super thankful for the opportunity to be out here and speak for a very long. I think we made up for the 15-minute podcast I had the first time around. I don't know if we're allowed to tell our viewers. I hope how late we've shot this podcast at night.
Yeah, this is the second episode in a row to film late. It's been tough not having the studio available right now with them being closed.
I love it,
but as we say, guys, I'm very thankful. Thank you so much for coming on, talking to the fans, giving me a different perspective. Really much appreciate it. I hope everybody has a happy Thanksgiving. Manchester United, best team in the world. Can't tell me otherwise. And I'll see you guys next week. Have a great time.
Milan.
Peace.
Thank you. Be well. And a quick plug for North Jersey Football Club and ITA Sports. Thanks. Have a wonderful night.
Give them a little love. All right. Bye, guys. Peace.
Bye-bye.